Everybody fits into one of four possible states of resiliency. You're either 1, already extremely resilient, 2, you're working on getting more resilient, 3, you're not resilient yet, but you'd like to start, or 4, you're not resilient and you couldn't care less. But regardless of which state you're currently in, this video is for you. It's for both the resilient few and the fragile masses, and everybody in between. Because today, we're going to discuss the fool's strategy of relying on others for your own survival. Hey, I'm Jack, and I'm a co-founder of SkilledSurvival.com and TheResilientLife.com. And I've been posting my tips and strategies on how to get prepared and how to become more resilient since 2013. And we've literally had millions of visitors who have a lot of questions around this stuff visit our site and get answers. And we're also now growing our YouTube channel so that we can reach even a bigger audience. So if you like this kind of content, if you need help getting prepared, then take a moment and subscribe to this channel now. That way, you won't miss any future videos down the road. Those of us interested in becoming part of the resilient few are familiar with the old age adage, don't tell anybody about your preps. This adage goes for food, supplies, firearm, ammo, bunkers, weapons, tools, water, etc. However, there's one odd trait all of us always possess. It's our uncontrollable desire to share our knowledge with our friends and family. Maybe it's a need for validation in the eyes of our less prepared friends. Or perhaps we're hoping to convince others to have more personal responsibility as well. But regardless, let's face reality and say it like it is. Most of society does not believe a significant catastrophe could turn into a long-term survival situation. But we see a dangerous world, sometimes exaggerated, sure, very often not. We see an unstable world. We have plenty of historical examples as proof for this. We also understand survival requires advanced and extensive preparation, which is hard and takes both time and energy. Unfortunately, most don't want the hassle of preparing, or they're not willing to spend the money, or they prefer to just live with their heads buried in the sand. The fragile masses look at us as somewhat eccentric and often paranoid, and at the same time, we look right back at them as sheep willing to march to their slaughter. Now, from the perspective of the fragile masses, one of the ironies is, although they view their resilient friends as extreme and sometimes the butt of lighthearted jokes, they can also see them as cheap insurance policies. A safety net, if you will. They say things like, my friend may be paranoid and he's wasting his money with all this prepping crap, but if things do go bad, I know exactly where I'm heading. After all, he's my friend, right? They mistake the willingness to share knowledge with the desire to share resources. This is a fool's strategy you should avoid. I've overheard one of my friends say once, I don't have to own a lot of guns and ammo, I just have to be able to get to Jack's house. Sure, this was said as an offhand joke, but I heard the subtle undertones of hope. In other words, they're admitting, I'm not going to waste my time, my efforts, and my money to become more resilient because my friend across town has everything my family needs. Plus, he's my friend, so he has to help me, right? If you're guilty of the, I'll head to my prepared buddy's place if shit hits the fan, then let me ask you this. Should your resilient friends share their resources with you just because you're friends? Sure, he may welcome you in with open arms if he's a very good friend, but are you sure that will be the reaction? Have you asked them if your assumption is valid? Is it possible they look at you on the doorstep and say, you want to come in? What'd you bring to the table? At this point, you'd best have something other than charm and good looks, but you've never taken resiliency seriously. You've got nothing to share. Now, perhaps your neighbor is a good friend and a Christian. Maybe they're willing to forgive you for your short-sightedness. Perhaps they're filled with immense love and generosity. Well, then you might be okay. Now, don't get me wrong, you're still a jerk in this equation. The guy holding his hand out for a slice of something you laughed about just a few days before is called a jerk. On the other hand, even if this great human can't adequately love everyone, there's no way to share all the resources with everyone he knows, at least not without jeopardizing their own survival. Perhaps you and your family are some of the lucky ones who he chooses, or maybe you don't quite measure up. There are 3 ways around this problem. Your first option is worst. Ask him, flat out. Ask your friend if they're willing to share their resources with you and your family. Asking, knowing you offer nothing helpful in return. Does that sound reasonable? Are you comfortable even asking that question? Of course not. You know it's lopsided. It's a crappy thing to ask. If you summon the courage to ask and he says, "Sure, pal, I love you and your family. You're always welcome to join us if things go bad." Well, then you're golden. Phew, the pressure's off. Or perhaps he's not such a good Christian after all, and perhaps you have a pretty good looking spouse. Make sure to think about all the possible angles before taking this gutless approach. Second, you can begin making yourself more resilient as well. This strategy is best. It's the right way. I said there were 3 ways. This last method is a bit sneaky, but still might be viable. You don't have to prep per se, but it would be in the best interest if you had an inventory of things in your house that will have value. Well, isn't that prepping, you ask? Yes and no. Real preparedness involves survival shelters, stockpiling food, water, ammunition, medical supplies, etc. Those who are resilient try very hard to address their family's foreseeable needs. A fake prepper will simply ensure he has some stuff of value, item which they can trade for other things they really need. For example, perhaps they own a couple of pistols, a deer rifle, a takedown 22 Ruger, a semi-auto AR-15. Someone who enjoys collecting guns may not be a prepper, but they still have a stash of valuable hardware they can barter into food, tools, medicine, and other needs. Or how about the guy with a swimming pool in his backyard? He's not a prepper, but he may have 25,000 to 35,000 gallons of fresh water stored back there. How about a coupon clipper? We've all waited behind that person at a checkout at one time or another. We know who they are. They're the person who comes home with $25 of stuff and the store paid her $26 to buy. They're the ones who hit the stores with coupons and take advantage of the BOGOs, buy one, get one. They're not a prepper, but they have a ton of calories and supplies, such as 42 boxes of cereal, 6 bottles of aspirin, 25 cans of Campbell's chunky soup, 15 jars of peanut butter, etc. How about the family who has garden or raises chickens for their eggs? They don't necessarily prepare either. They're just smart folks with a ready supply of food and, of course, the tools and knowledge required to raise that food. If you're an avid hunter or a fisherman and you bring those tools and skill sets, okay, that has promise. Maybe you're a doctor of medicine, mind you. PhDs in chiropractics don't count in a post-apocalyptic world. Do you own your gas-powered generator? It may be you who gets through the door. What about the guy who reloads ammo as a hobby? Or, when shit hits the fan, he cleans out his inventory of bullets, primers, powders, and he comes looking for a trade. That's worth a ton of value in a chaotic world. So the lesson here is, don't show up on someone's doorstep asking for food, shelter, or medicine in a time of great crisis. You're risking your life if you have nothing to offer. The fact that your buddies decided to prepare is not a reason for you not to. Keep in mind, friendships should work both ways. You view them as good friends and even better ones in times of need. Who is to say his view of you won't change when you come with your hat in hand? He may ask himself, what kind of friend is this? The kind who takes advantage of another's hard work and generosity? Is that the kind of friend you need? So ask yourself this. If a neighbor knocks on your door and asks for your help when you haven't prepared at all, will you share what little food you have? If the answer is no, don't be surprised if that's the same answer your prepper buddy gives when you try it. Besides, preppers have waited years to say, "I told you so." If your family's survival hinges on his opening that door after he says that, you might survive. Are you going to bet your life on it? Because in survival, relying on others' generosity is a fool's strategy. Being prepared and mentally resilient are the 2 main aspects everyone should focus on to be ready for the future and its uncertainties. And if you agree, and it's something you seek, then I recommend you checking out The Resilient Life. It's a system and a community of folks that support and adapt a resilient attitude towards all of life's ups and downs. Because becoming a more resilient person provides benefits and options and security in your life, more flexibility, all qualities which are necessary to achieving true fulfillment and happiness. If this sounds like something you'd like to learn more about, down in the description, click the link that says The Resilient Life and check it out.